Hey everyone, I've been asked quite a few times to create the Battlefield 3 text effect in Photoshop, but I've always put it to the side because it really didn't seem too complicated. But since I've recently received a few more requests on this effect, today I'm going to be showing you how to create this Battlefield 3 text effect in Photoshop. Now there are a few variations of the Battlefield text, but this one, which was taken from the official website, will give you a great starting point if you want to further customize the effect. Of course, the first step after you've created your document is the base text. We're going to be using two different fonts for the text, one for the word Battlefield and one for the number 3. Both fonts will be linked on the post at iceflowstudios.com. The size of the font is up to you, but I'm going to be starting large, somewhere around 200 points. Now for the Battlefield text, Agency FB Bold was the most accurate font that I found. And then for the number 3, Chica Mono works quite well. Now that our text is ready to go, let's add a very subtle gradient overlay. The top color, which is on the right of the gradient bar, will be a very light gray. And then the bottom color will be slightly darker than the top. Perfect. At this point, we need to add a canvas type texture to the text, which can be done in a few ways, including a pattern overlay, but when combined with a gradient, it's a little bit tricky, so we're going to resort to a filter. Now before you aimlessly add a filter to your text, make sure you convert it for smart filters first. This will not only ensure that you can edit the filter settings later on, but you'll also be able to go back and change the text if needed. The filter we're going to be applying is Texturize, which on Photoshop CS5 was under the Texture submenu, but in Photoshop CS6 it's now accessible in the Filter gallery. When the Texturize filter is selected, select Canvas for the texture, decrease the scaling to 50%, and set the relief at 2. Of course, if you want a stronger texture or a completely different texture, experiment with the different filters that are available. The next step in the effect is the blue and black outline that you see at the bottom half of the text. For this, we're going to create our own pattern, which will give us a lot more flexibility on how the final result looks. Start by creating a new document with the dimensions 8 pixels by 8 pixels. And then when the document is ready, zoom in as far as you can go. You can do this by holding down your Command and Spacebar on the Mac or Control Spacebar on Windows and then dragging your mouse to the right. Now we need to create the pattern. We're going to start with the blue, which is going to be a nice light blue. The value for this one is going to be B4, D0, DF. Now with that color set, use your pencil tool, which can be found in the flyout menu with the brush tool, and then paint the left half of the document with that blue you just set. And finally, switching over to a black brush, paint the right half of the document completely black. Perfect. Now before we save it, one optional step you might want to take is to blur the pattern. This will give a slightly softer feel to the outline. Now that our pattern is complete, it's time to save it. Under the Edit menu at the top, choose the Define Pattern option and give it a name. Battlefield 3 sounds appropriate. Good, now let's hop back over to our original document. Because we're going to be using a pattern, we're able to apply it as a stroke. But if we apply it directly to our original text layer, we won't be able to fade it out using a layer mask, so we're going to need to create a separate layer to do that. In your Layers panel, hold down your Shift key and click on the New Layer icon to quickly create a new layer. Now turn your text into a selection by holding down Command or Control and then clicking on the text layer's thumbnail. Once a selection has been made, fill the color with any color that you like. Command Delete or Control Backspace will fill the selection with your background color. Now as we don't actually want the color to be showing, turn the fill, not opacity, but fill down to 0%. Decreasing the fill will hide the original layer, but allow us to see our layer styles which we're about to add. Now we're ready to apply the pattern. Double click on your new layer to bring up the layer styles, and then hop into the stroke section. Towards the bottom, change the fill type to pattern, and then in the pattern picker, find and select the pattern that you just created. It should be at the very bottom of the list. Now depending on how thick you want the stroke, you can change the size at the top. 3 or 4 should work quite well. Another neat trick is that you're able to move the pattern if you're not happy with the positioning. By simply clicking and dragging your mouse over top of the text, you can position the pattern exactly where you want it. That looks good right there. Alright, we're almost there. The last step is to fade out the stroke. Your first instinct would be to add a layer mask, select a black to white gradient, and drag it from the top of the text to the bottom. However, as you can see, when applying the layer mask to a layer with layer styles, the result isn't always pretty. So to work around that, just like we did with the text layer, go ahead and convert it for smart filters first. Now we can apply a layer mask, and with a black to white gradient selected, drag out a gradient from around the middle of the text right to the bottom. And that just about does it. Now if you want, you can also duplicate the design to add a reflection underneath. Simply select both layers in your Layers panel, pop them into a group by holding down Shift and clicking on the new group icon at the bottom. Go ahead and duplicate the group, convert it to a smart object, flip it, move it into place, add a layer mask, and with a white to black gradient, fade it out just like we did with the stroke. Now looking at the original and the design that we just created, it looks like we almost nailed it. Of course, you can use the same technique to type any word that you like and incorporate it into your gaming related designs. If you want to check out more Photoshop tutorials just like this, check out iceflowstudios.com and make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with future content. Take care.